My name is Melissa James. I'm 37 years old, a major in the United States Air Force, 14 years of service, 3 deployments, 1 broken heart. I was stationed at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar when the email came in. It was a Thursday morning. I had just finished a 12-hour shift coordinating logistics for an emergency airlift into Syria. I opened my laptop to check messages from home. The subject line read, "Let's move on." I paused, reread it. My first thought was something happened to Greg, an accident, something serious. But when I clicked the message, I realized he wasn't hurt. He was done. The email was 3 sentences long. No greeting, no apology, just straight to the point. He had already filed for divorce. He had already moved out of our house in Austin, and he had already emptied our joint account. 3 sentences. 11 years of marriage reduced to a digital shrug. I sat there in my uniform, still covered in dust and jet fuel fumes, staring at the screen. My hands didn't shake. I didn't cry, I just shut the laptop. Then I stood up, adjusted my cap, and walked back to the operations tent like nothing had happened. When you serve long enough, you learn to compartmentalize. You file the pain away like another report, another briefing, another mission to complete. But that night, lying in my bunk, I stared at the ceiling and whispered the words out loud. He's really gone. We met at a defense industry conference in San Antonio. I was a 2nd lieutenant, fresh out of the academy. Greg was working IT security for a civilian contractor. He said I walked into that room like I already owned it. I said he looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. I never imagined he'd be the one to leave. Looking back, there were signs. The missed calls, the new passwords on his phone, the sudden interest in solo hiking trips. But I didn't confront him. I didn't accuse him. That's not who I am. I believed that trust was something you earned and gave back equally. Apparently, I was wrong. Still, I wasn't stupid, and I wasn't unprepared. A year before deployment, something in my gut told me things were shifting. So I made a few quiet changes, opened a separate account, moved my mother's inheritance out of reach, shifted the deed of our home into a trust under my name alone. I never told him, because part of me already knew, not the whole truth, but enough to prepare. And now, sitting 7,000 miles from my own front door, I realized that the man I once promised to love, in sickness and in health, had chosen to dismantle our life piece by piece. While I was flying cargo missions in a combat zone, but if he thought he could break me with a PDF and a bank withdrawal, he was going to learn something else about me. I don't start wars, but I do finish them. The truth is, the marriage had been unraveling long before that email ever landed in my inbox. It didn't happen overnight. There was no screaming match, no slammed doors, just silence, a slow, creeping kind of distance. I used to call him every night after duty, not always long calls. Just enough to check in, hear his voice, feel like home, still existed somewhere on the other side of the planet. But somewhere along the way, Greg stopped answering. At first, he said he was busy. Then his texts got shorter, drier. Sounds good. Okay, talk later. He stopped asking how my day was, stopped telling me about his. I told myself it was the time difference, stress, maybe even depression. I wanted to believe we were just in a rough patch, like so many military couples go through. But then came the subtle shifts. He started working out again. Not a bad thing on its own. But suddenly, he had a new gym buddy I'd never met. Then there was the new Instagram profile, private. When I asked, he said it was just for some tech guys he was networking with. He never added me. And then there were the trips, weekend hiking getaways he never used to take. I need to unplug, he'd say. But when I asked who he was going with, he'd change the subject. By that point, I had already stopped pressing. I didn't want to be the jealous military wife. I didn't want to become the person checking his phone while he slept. But I wasn't blind. I come from a long line of women who survived more than they should have had to. My mother raised 3 kids on a postal worker's salary after my dad left. I learned early, prepare for the storm, even if the sky looks clear. So I did. Without ever accusing him, I began putting safeguards in place. I moved my inheritance from my mother's passing, about $30,000, into a trust only I could access. We had bought our house in Austin 5 years earlier. It was a 2-bedroom fixer-upper, and while the mortgage was in both names, I had taken care of the renovation costs. I paid the property taxes. Quietly, I filed the paperwork to move the house into a revocable living trust under my name, citing my military status and power of attorney. Greg never noticed. Or maybe he did, and just didn't care. I opened a secondary bank account at a local credit union and began diverting a portion of my paycheck there. Not much. Just enough that if something ever went wrong, I wouldn't be left with nothing. I didn't want to believe we were heading for divorce, but I'd seen too many friends come home to empty apartments and frozen accounts. And if that day ever came for me, I promised myself I'd be ready. What I didn't expect was that it would come so soon, and that he wouldn't even have the decency to say it to my face. 2 weeks after that email, I got a notification on my phone. It was 2:43 in the morning, base time. I had just crawled into my bunk after a 14-hour shift rerouting supplies due to a sandstorm. My body was running on fumes, my mind barely functioning. I glanced at the screen out of habit. It was from our bank app. A transaction alert. $48,200 withdrawn from our joint savings. I sat up so fast my head hit the metal frame above me. At first, I thought it was a mistake, a glitch. I opened the app. The savings account, the one we'd built over the years for emergencies, for one day starting a family, for maybe buying land when I retired, was down to a balance of $52.73. I scrolled. Another transfer, and another. They weren't new. They'd started the week after I deployed. Small amounts at first, then bigger ones, systematic, precise, like someone had been planning this. I stared at the screen, my breath caught between disbelief and fury. And then I did what I always do when things get too big, too overwhelming. I went into mission mode. The next morning, I called the bank from the communication tent. I waited on hold for 20 minutes under fluorescent lights that buzzed like mosquitoes. Finally, I got through. The rep confirmed it. Greg had been transferring money little by little, then made a final withdrawal 3 days ago. I hung up and sat there, phone still in hand, listening to the soft hum of generators outside. My fellow officers were calling their spouses, laughing, making plans for leave. I just sat still, staring at the sand outside the tent flap. That's when the grief finally hit me. Not because of the money, but because of how easily he had done it, how methodically, how cold. Greg hadn't just left me. He had dismantled every piece of our life together, like it was furniture he no longer needed. That night, I skipped the mess hall. I skipped the gym. I walked out to the edge of the airfield, stood there under the Qatari stars, and asked myself the question I had been avoiding. What now? And like any mission briefing, the answer came in steps. I didn't need to cry. I didn't need to scream. What I needed was a plan. I went back to my quarters, opened my laptop, and logged into every account we ever shared. Utilities, insurance, investments, mortgage. And then I remembered something. 2 months before deployment, Greg had casually mentioned refinancing the house. "Rates are low," he said. "Might be worth looking into." At the time, it felt like just another financial conversation. But now, it sounded like a warning shot I had ignored. And if he had forged my signature on something as big as a refinance, then this wasn't just a divorce. This was something else entirely. That night, I made a list. Not an emotional list, not a revenge list, a tactical one. Just like any mission briefing, it had 3 objectives: secure, investigate, respond. Step 1, call Sophia, my old roommate from the academy. She left active duty a few years back and became a lawyer specializing in military family law. I messaged her through Signal, the secure app we used for sensitive comms. She called me the next morning. No small talk, just the facts. I told her about the email, the missing money, the possibility of forged signatures. "Send me everything," she said, and do not, under any circumstance, confront him directly. Step 2, check the cameras. Greg had probably forgotten, or maybe he assumed I wouldn't have time to look. But 2 years ago, I installed a full home security system with cloud backup. Front door, living room, kitchen, backyard. I logged in, and there they were. A woman I didn't recognize was sitting on my couch. My couch. In my house. She was laughing, holding a wine glass from the set Greg and I bought in Napa for our 5th anniversary, wearing one of my old hoodies, the Air Force one with my name stitched on the sleeve. And Greg? He walked into the frame holding our dog, Luna, like it was just another quiet Sunday at home. That's when something in me went still. It wasn't rage. Rage is hot. This was cold, focused. I didn't cry. I clicked record on the camera feed. Then I opened my email and typed one line to Sophia. They're in my house. I need options. Fast. Step 3, review the refinance. I remembered where Greg kept our files. A cloud folder we shared for tax purposes. I pulled the last mortgage statement and scanned the PDF. Then I saw it. A document marked Refinance Agreement, signed. Only, it wasn't my signature. The initials were close, but the loop in the M was wrong. The cross-stroke on the J didn't match. And the date, it was the same week I deployed. I emailed it to Sophia. She replied within an hour. That's forgery. And if you pulled equity out of the house while you were deployed using a forged signature, that's federal territory. That's when it all began to click together. Greg hadn't just run away with someone else. He had orchestrated this. The withdrawals, the refinance, the forged paperwork. I was halfway around the world, flying aid to refugee zones. And back home, he was building a new life on my name, my credit, and my house. But he'd made one mistake. He underestimated who he was married to. The next day, I called the mortgage lender from the Basecom Center. I gave them my name, my military ID, and asked about the refinance on our property. The woman on the phone hesitated when I said I didn't remember signing anything. She asked if I could hold. When she came back, her tone had changed. "Ma'am, the documents we have on file show your signature, but if you're saying it's not yours, we may need to escalate this." I said, "Escalate it." I emailed her a copy of my real signature along with a scan of my military ID and asked her to compare it to the file they had. 20 minutes later, I got an email back confirming my worst suspicion. The signature on the refinance application didn't match. Not even close. Someone had copied my name, but not my handwriting. I forwarded that email to Sophia immediately. She called me within minutes. "It's time," she said. "You need to report this to the bank's fraud division and file a formal notice with the county. He can't be allowed to sell or transfer anything else without your signature." I followed every step she gave me. I filed a dispute with the bank, contesting the loan based on identity fraud. I submitted a notarized affidavit to the county clerk's office, placing a freeze on the property. No changes could be made without my in-person authorization. And I contacted the credit bureaus to flag potential fraud under my Social Security number. That night, I didn't sleep. Not out of anxiety, but out of clarity. My thoughts were clean, focused. I wasn't spiraling anymore. I was building something, a response plan, a mission. The following morning, I got another notification, a withdrawal, $16,000 gone. The account had almost nothing left. I called the bank again, demanded the transaction details. At first, they resisted, privacy protocols. But once I explained the fraud claim and provided documentation, they transferred me to someone higher up in the fraud department. The man on the line was direct, professional. He told me the funds were wired to a man named Daniel Spencer. I asked, "Who is that?" He replied, "He's listed as a business partner on the refinance paperwork, a real estate broker." I froze. "Real estate broker?" I asked for contact information. He couldn't give it to me. "You'll need to request that through legal channels," he said. I hung up and called Sophia. "Daniel Spencer," I told her. "Apparently, he's the broker on the loan, and he's got my money." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Let me look into it. This might be bigger than we thought." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a setup. Carefully planned, possibly with more people involved, and I had no idea how deep it went. but I was going to find out. By noon the next day, Sophia called me back. Her voice was calm, but there was something in her tone, something heavier than before. "I found him," she said. "Daniel Spencer, licensed real estate agent, specializes in quick cash sales, foreclosures, divorce property transfers. He's been involved in some shady deals, and he's worked repeatedly with someone named Jeremy Ryan." That name stopped me cold. "Wait," I said, "Jeremy? That's the guy I saw on the home cameras. He was walking my dog, drinking from my mug." Sophia went on, "Jeremy isn't just a friend of Greg's. He's part of this. Big part." I pulled his record. 2 DUIs, 1 fraud conviction from 2019. But here's what matters. He's connected to at least 3 other cases just like yours. I leaned forward in the chair, suddenly hyper-aware of every sound in the room. 3 other cases?" I asked. "All military spouses," she replied. "Women who were deployed, their husbands filed for divorce, sold the homes under shady terms, and disappeared with most of the money. Same pattern, same names. Jeremy Ryan and Daniel Spencer. They work together. Spencer lists the homes. Jeremy's the one who inserts himself into the personal lives. Sometimes he gets close to the spouse. Sometimes he uses someone else to do it." That's when I thought of her. The woman I saw on my living room couch, laughing, wearing my hoodie, drinking from my wine glass. The one Greg moved into our house without a second thought. "She's not just his rebound," I said quietly. "She's part of it." "I wouldn't be surprised," Sophia said. "We're looking into her now." My throat tightened. The violation wasn't just legal, it was personal. Every piece of my life had been invaded. My home, my money, my memories. "This is a ring, Melissa," she said. "A coordinated operation, not just some guy cheating on his wife. These people target military families. They know when deployments happen. They know who holds the mortgage. They know how to move fast." I stood up and walked toward the window of the operations tent, staring out across the hot, flat expanse of the base. "How do we stop them?" I asked. "I've already filed a report with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit," Sophia said. "They've been tracking cases like this, but yours might be the one that puts everything together. You've got documentation, signatures, camera footage, and you're an active duty officer." I didn't feel angry. I felt activated. This wasn't just about Greg anymore. This wasn't about heartbreak. This was a mission, and I was all in. 2 days later, I stepped off the plane and back onto American soil. I didn't tell Greg. I didn't tell anyone. I checked into a motel on the edge of Austin under a different name. The first person I met in person was Sophia. We sat in a corner booth at a quiet diner just off the highway, and she slid a folder across the table. "Everything we pulled so far, it's real, Melissa. All of it." Inside were copies of the forged refinance paperwork, withdrawal logs from our joint accounts, and, most disturbing of all, a property listing draft. My house, my name, listed by Daniel Spencer. The good news? It wasn't live yet. We had a window. Back at the motel, I opened the cloud dashboard for our home security system. Greg had no idea I still had access. He never changed the login. I pulled up the live feed from the living room, and there they were. Greg lounging on my couch, the woman beside him, Sabrina, folding laundry like she'd lived there for years. A dog toy rolled past the screen. Luna was still there. My dog, my home, my life. They had taken everything but the air. Then Jeremy showed up. He walked in like he had a key. They talked in the kitchen. I turned up the audio. Greg asked if they were still on track. Jeremy said, "Spencer's ready. He's coming by tomorrow. We'll get photos, finalize the numbers, then list. No need to involve Melissa. She's gone. Overseas. She won't fight this." That was the moment I knew. I hit record. Then I called Sophia and forwarded the footage to Agent Patel at the FBI. The next morning, I watched from my car down the block as Daniel Spencer pulled into my driveway. His SUV had a real estate magnet on the side. Jeremy greeted him like they were old friends. The two of them entered the house, and I pulled up the live feed again. This time, the audio was even clearer. "We'll list at $480, Spencer said. "Buyers are offering $430 cash. Easy close." Jeremy laughed. She won't contest it. She's in Qatar, for God's sake. I forwarded the feed to Patel. 10 minutes later, 3 black SUVs rolled onto my street. The FBI moved quickly. Quiet, fast, efficient. One agent took Spencer in cuffs by the arm. Another shoved Jeremy face first into the garage wall. Greg wasn't home. Sabrina wasn't either. But they'd left enough behind to tell the whole story. I didn't move. Just sat there in my car, engine running, windows cracked, watching it all unfold. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. This was justice, and it wasn't over yet. The next 48 hours moved faster than anything I'd ever experienced outside of combat operations. FBI agents combed through my house. They recovered documents, digital files, even blank prescription pads that had no business being there. Spencer and Jeremy were both arrested on site. Charges included wire fraud, conspiracy, and attempted sale of property under false pretenses. Within a day, federal agents linked their scheme to at least 7 other families, military families, deployed spouses, forged signatures, rapid-fire property sales. My case gave the feds exactly what they needed: direct video and audio evidence. And it was just the beginning. Sophia met with me at the field office. "You're not just a victim here," she said. "You're the reason this case is breaking wide open." I nodded, but I didn't feel heroic. Just tired. Then came the big question. What about Greg? That afternoon, I received a call from Agent Patel. "We're still determining your ex-husband's role," she said. "His name isn't on any of the real estate filings, but he clearly benefited. He gave access. He lied. He signed things he shouldn't have." Later that night, Greg finally called. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short. "Melissa, I didn't know they were scamming you. I thought it was just refinancing, just business stuff. I'm sorry. Please call me." I didn't call back. A week later, I sat across from Sophia and Agent Patel in a private conference room. "You have options," Patel said. "You can press charges against Greg, or settle civilly, but either way, you have grounds." I took a deep breath. Then I said what had been circling in my mind for days. "I want full restitution, every dollar taken. I want his name off the house, off my accounts, off everything. I want a clean break, no more ties." "And if he agrees?" Sophia asked. "Then I won't push for criminal charges," I said. "But I want a signed confession about the forged signature, in writing." Greg agreed, maybe because he was scared, maybe because he was guilty, or maybe because deep down he knew I was no longer the woman he could manipulate. The divorce finalized 3 months later. No fault on paper. But the truth was far from clean. In the end, I got the house, the money, and the peace of mind that comes from knowing exactly who you are after everything you built has been broken. I transferred the title into my name only, painted the front door, changed the locks, got Luna a new collar with just my name and number on it. The house didn't feel like home anymore, but it was mine, every square foot of it. A year later, I sold the house. I had restored it. New paint, new cabinets, even refinished the hardwood floors. But no matter what I changed, the walls still whispered memories I didn't want to keep. I couldn't sit in the kitchen without picturing Greg handing Jeremy a beer. I couldn't lie in bed without hearing the echo of that email. Let's move on. So I moved on. I bought a small ranch house outside of Durango, Colorado. 2 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and a patch of forest out back where the stars actually show up at night. I named the Wi-Fi network No More Secrets. The first thing I planted in the yard was a cactus, same as the one I kept in my barracks in Qatar. Still alive, still growing, like me. I took early retirement from the Air Force after 20 years of service. Enough medals to fill a drawer, enough deployments to know what silence feels like. I still wake up at 0500 every day, but now it's to walk Luna along the creek instead of prepping for morning briefings. Some days I work part-time with a nonprofit that helps military spouses navigate financial abuse. I don't tell my full story, just enough to help someone else ask the right questions, to open the right file, to trust their instincts. One afternoon I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just a Fort Bragg postmark. Inside was a handwritten note from a woman I'd never met. "You don't know me," it read, "but you saved me." The FBI showed up before my husband could sell the house. They said your case was the reason. I still have my home. My kids still have their rooms. Thank you. I read that letter twice, then pinned it to the fridge next to Luna's adoption papers and a photo of my mom in uniform. Every time I see it, I remember something I almost forgot, that good can come from the worst things, that silence can be broken, that the truth, even when it's late, still matters. Last I heard, Jeremy took a plea deal, 8 years in federal prison. Daniel Spencer got 12. Greg, he disappeared, probably back to IT work somewhere, telling people he just got unlucky. That's fine. I don't need closure from him. I gave that to myself. And me? I'm still rebuilding, one quiet day at a time. No courtrooms, no signatures, no battles to win. Just peace and air and space. And for the first time in years, everything I have is truly mine.